Hi everyone, my name is Adana. Um, so please forgive me, I was assaulted by the wind coming in, and I do have a bit of an allergy. Um, so Naomi, I know you wanted me to talk about. My journey into law is a lot different from a lot of the traditional pathways. I'm an immigrant, so I had to re-educate myself when I came to Canada. So it was not a straightforward path. In terms of getting into law, the field is so diverse. You can get into any area of law. In terms of if you start articling in one particular area, does not mean you have to stay. I have practiced civil law, family law, um, estate, real estate. I have done so many types of law until now. I have finally settled into doing criminal law, where I focus on the people in the community that need the help the most in terms of people who can't afford a lawyer traditional way, people who can't access legal aid. So that's where my focus is in terms of how I work in the Chatham Kent community. I'm also located in Windsor, but my main focus is the area of Chatham Kent. So, if the students can ask questions and tell me what kind of information they're looking for, I'm happy to share. Otherwise, I can just give kind of broad information. So, in terms of the people who are looking to get into law, is it that you're looking to get into criminal law, or is it that you're looking to get into an area of law where you can help people? And
What's the difference?
in every area of law, you can help people, but you have to identify who you want to help. Are you looking to help people who struggle with mental health? Are you looking to help neighbors who have a dispute? Are you looking to help businesses, established businesses make corporate deals? Are you looking to help business owners who are now starting? Yeah.
I think that it's like that. I don't
Corporate law is attractive. It's very flashy. It calls for a lot of work, large salaries, and that's the reason a lot of people get into corporate law. If it's something that you're truly interested in, you have that desire to be, part of the business world and do mergers and acquisitions and, that kind of thing. But there are many different areas of business law as well. There's corporate, there's employment law, there's labor law, intellectual property. So it's really this time where you're at, it's where you explore. So, I know a lot of you may have preconceived notions about what type of law you want to be in, and you would tailor your applications towards those type of firms, but don't limit yourself because getting into a firm that practices many different areas of law has its benefits because you can really see what interests you. This job is hard enough without hating what you do.
legislation around it and by like code provincially federally I have to charter. Um how would you recommend like so as a student who will be graduating with my degree, my 4 year degree here next year, wanting to go on to get higher education, my master's, what sort of education in like student education we actually thinking to recommend that's not necessarily going to law school, but can inform them go to work that way better able to do like legislative outreach.
So if you want to get into something like that where you're talking about making policy, then you should focus your efforts on getting into classes that deal with policy making, regulation making, law writing, legal research, because that's a big part of it as well. So you say you want to get into social work to effect change of law, right?
Yeah. I,
They are lawyers doing lots of different jobs. They are lawyers who have decided that they are better at the administrative side of things. That's why when we're qualified as both barristers and solicitors. Barristers meaning the ones who go to court and the advocates in the courtroom. Solicitors do more of the written work. So if you are a paper warrior, that's where you do your best advocacy, then being a lawyer doesn't stop you from going that route. I mean, there are only a few areas of law that really require you to get up and go to court. But a lot of areas of law are, you do a lot of the work on paper. So going to law school is still a good idea because it can open up a lot of doors for you, especially if you want to get into policy change and working with those advocates that, spark policy change. Because what they look for from lawyers are we are the ones who's on the ground. So when laws are being changed or reformed, they come to us and they say, what are your thoughts on this? So aid. I mean, I know that there are a lot of routes depending on if you are Canadian citizen or otherwise. There may be routes available to you, but that's something you have to explore. There are grants, there are bursaries, there are scholarships if you have a high GPA. There are a lot of different avenues, but once you have the will, there is a way. Yeah. It's an investment, though. Just remember, it's an expensive investment. So I decided to go work, and I started working at a law firm. And I was the secretary. I I was really good with the clients. I started to do accounting because I thought that's where my passion was. Until halfway through the program, I realized I didn't want to do it. So I went to the University of London. I worked full time. I went to school part time. I did it in 3 years. After that, went to law school full time for 2 years. Then I got called to the bar. Um, the firm that I worked at, they did everything except criminal law. And I was very I was interested in criminal, but the firm that I was at just didn't do it. So I thought I didn't have a pathway until I got an internship with a law firm here in Minnesota. And they did criminal, and turns out it's something I'm good at. And it's something I want to stay with because there are too many people in need. There are just too many people who are feeling the weight of the state against them without proper representation. And I just, I stuck with it.
There's a lot of ways to help people, and that's a whole lot of school. So what made you stick with it?
Because I was good at it. I mean, you have to know what you're good at. As much as I'm a very good people warrior, I make a lot of good, I'm good at written advocacy. I felt that I was better served in the courtroom, you know, advocating for my clients. So that's why I stuck with it. And I decided I would learn everything that I need to know about criminal law. I also do mental health law and immigration. So criminal law, that was something I was always passionate about. So I stuck with it and I learned everything. Immigration law, on the other hand, was something that I had personal experience with. And I felt that the representation I got from the lawyer that I chose, I was really disappointed with the representation. And when I shared my story, I realized that a lot of other people struggled with the same things I struggled with my own lawyer. So I decided I would become a better lawyer and provide better service in that particular area. So
Do you have a favorite client or case you can tell us about?
mm,
Was it ours? Ours was pretty good.
that was a really good case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hmm, sorry, immigration. Oh, I had a criminal case where it was a small town. The gentleman who was my client was alleged to have assaulted somebody who was a pretty high profile person in the town. So nobody wanted to represent him. So he had a very hard time finding a lawyer. Eventually, he called me. By that time, he had already been forced to set trial dates because of the timelines that we work within. And he was essentially like, I don't want to go to jail. I know what I did was wrong. It was an alleged assault. Um, but the Crown is saying that they want to send me to jail for 60 days and I have a kid. So I got the necessary permissions to represent him. Like, it was very far out of this jurisdiction. And what a lot of people don't understand is that even if the Crown asks for a particular disposition or particular penalty, it doesn't mean they're going to get it. So he was scared out of his wits because he's thinking he's going to jail, doesn't have anyone to take care of his kid. And ultimately, I tried to negotiate with the Crown. I was unsuccessful. Um, he wanted to plead guilty. So what I did is that I got his permission. We vacated the trial date and we set him out for a guilty plea. I remained steadfast in my position. I was like, this does not warrant jail. This person does not. He has a criminal record, but it's a very old one. I mean, an upstanding member of society. He's made mistakes. So Crown and we could not agree. So the judge had to decide. I mean, the client was a nervous wreck. And after hearing from both myself and the Crown attorney, who the Crown attorney advocated for jail, and the Crown attorney said, even though this gentleman, he has a job, he has an autistic child, he doesn't have much of a criminal record. The Crown was saying, I can agree he needs to be with his child, but let's send him to jail on the weekend for 60 days. It's called an intermittent jail sentence where you can serve it on a weekend. So the Crown was saying, yes, I still want jail, but inviting the judge to send him to jail on the weekend and let him come out during the week for his responsibilities. Ultimately, the judge agreed with me, and he was given a suspended sentence with probation. So while he was still held accountable, he took responsibility for assaulting the gentleman, and the judge essentially saw through what they were alleging. The victim was saying, this guy just walked up to me and punched me. And the victim is, and my client is saying, there's a lot of things that happened before this thing happened. I didn't just walk up to him and punch him like a crazy person. The judge saw through all of that, and he got probation. He was able to start his new job. He still has his custody of his son, and has to report to probation and participate in anger management. So that was, the outcome wasn't what I wanted. I mean, I would have liked to get involved very early on and hopefully got the charges withdrawn, but he avoided a jail sentence, which was the most important thing to him. So it was a successful outcome as far as he was concerned. And I was happy that he wasn't sent to jail and separated from his child, which would have been devastating for the family. So that is one of the good ones. I also had an immigration case. The outcome was not great, but there was one where the person came to Canada as a refugee, and he was successful in his refugee application. The court found that he had fled from a terrible situation in his country, granted him refugee protection. Once you get refugee protection, then you can become a permanent resident, and then from there you can become a citizen. After he got his PR, he applied to become a citizen at some point. And during the background checks that they do, something was flagged, and they reopened his refugee file. And it was discovered that he had made a misrepresentation on the refugee application, which meant that everything that flowed from that successful refugee claim was now part of that misrepresentation, so null and void. And the minister filed an application to take away his refugee status and then take away his PR, couldn't go to citizenship. And the minister was successful. So it was a case where it's black and white. Did you misrepresent facts to immigration? Misrepresentation is by giving false facts or leaving out facts that you ought to share. And it was found that he misrepresented in a lot of respects. So there was no way around that. So ultimately, while he did not get the result that he wanted, because it was a pretty straightforward case, did you or did you not misrepresent? He didn't get the outcome he wanted. The minister was successful. It's one of those cases that brings home, at least for me, how our systems have built-in checks and balances. It's not a system where it's like a free-for-all. There are checks and balances built in every step of the way. And as an officer of the court, as all lawyers are, I could not allow my client to continue with that misrepresentation, meaning go before the board and make up a story to cover the misrepresentation. Because as officers of the court, we can never mislead the court in any way. And we must never encourage our clients to do so, because we can lose our life. So that is one of those cases, at least for me, that really stood out for me. And as much as I sympathize with my client and for the life that he had built here in Canada, it was a life built on a lie. And the sad thing is that his real story, the true story of why he came to Canada, may have been good enough for a successful refugee claim. But someone told him, you need to have the perfect story. And if you say this, you're sure to be successful. And he was. But they can always reopen. Right? So it's not absolute.
It's incredible the power of these, like, sort of gray stories that people hear about how to navigate the system.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
People take advice from all different sources. We have Google doctors, we have Google lawyers. I have a client who telephoned me, not a client, a potential client, who said, I am a permanent resident, and my permanent residency was off of a successful PR application, but I want to go back to my home country, which I can tell you is a no-no. Because if you are saying that the situation in this country is so terrible that you have to flee and there's a risk to your life, that Canada has granted you protection, for you to turn around and say, no, I want to go back to this country for a vacation, those two things, they can't reside together. So I'm telling him, I said, you can't go back. And he says to me, well, my friends have done it. Okay? If that's a risk you want to take. So while your friend may not have any consequence because no one looks at his file, you may be the unlucky one that somebody takes a look at your file and suddenly you are being hauled before the Immigration and Refugee Board and being told that your permanent resident status is going to be taken away from you. And all because, my friend did it. So he did it and got away with it. So I'm good. So just be careful who you take your advice from.
If that's even the truth, right?
Yeah, if that's the truth, but when you do things at your own peril. Because at the end of the day, ignorance of the law is no excuse. The laws are wide and vast, and there's a lot to read, but even if you don't know, you're still liable. So,
Are you finding your job changing with the changing context in the U.S.?
yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, I have a lot of U.S. citizens calling me and saying, how can we move to Canada? There's been an uptick in that. There are people who are there, some with status, some without, just trying to find a way to get out. Some trying to find easy ways to get into Canada. And I am very careful in my advice because at the end of the day, we all have to live here and we all have to, there is a limit being placed now on the number of immigrants. So I have to advise them wisely in terms of what is available to them and no trying to sneak through the back door, so to speak, because some of them are thinking about that. Yeah. So, yeah.
What's the appeal process for
What type of immigration and refugee? So if you are a refugee claimant and you are not successful, so that means you apply for refugee status, you're not successful, then you apply for judicial review. The timelines are tight. You have 15 days from the date that you receive the negative decision to appeal, and you have to get leave to appeal. So you have to send in a document that essentially says, these are the merits of my appeal, and then you seek the permission. Once you get the permission, you file your record, and then you go through the process. And if you're not successful at that point, then there are different steps up the ladder. I mean, coming down to the end, we have the pre-application, which is the pre-removal risk assessment. And then the very, very last option for most people would be humanitarian and compassionate application. And that's the very, very last resort. You should never make that application unless you've exhausted every other remedy and every other path.
Oh, yeah, first, go ahead.
Personally, I wanted to do what you do. When we first started was
Protect your reputation. Your reputation begins in school. So, I mean, in this day and age where we can fast record everything, just remember everywhere you go, you're being recorded. Everywhere you go, you're being observed. What we're finding now is a proliferation of young people who are making applications for these jobs. And while they're qualified on paper, a lot of these jobs, for example, if you want to get into the Crown's office as a Crown attorney or a prosecutor, you have to consent to a background check. And as part of the background check, we're finding a lot of young people. We're finding videos of things that they posted on social media 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago that is essentially now coming back to bite them in the ear, right? And they're losing great opportunities because of things that they've done in the past. So be wary of what you do, of how you carry yourself, who you speak to. I mean, was it last year where these students at some universities were protesting? Yeah, and a lot of them were caught on video saying hateful things and hurling slurs at each other and things like that. And now that they're out of university and now into the job market, they're finding it difficult because when somebody searches their name, that's the first thing that comes up. Now, in this field, I mean, being professional, it goes without saying. But being professional is not only about how we carry ourselves in the courtroom. It's about how we present in public, how we deal with our colleagues, how we deal with clients, how we deal with their family members, how we deal with the court clerk, the officers, security officers. Even when you're not on duty, you still have to carry yourself in a way that you won't be ashamed of, and, for want of a better word. And I know we're all young and we want to have fun and we go out and we, might have a few drinks, but you have to always be mindful. Because these things, and especially of what you post on your own social media. So sometimes if somebody else posts something, you may be able to explain it away. But the things you post and the comments you make, whether it's your own comments or you write it underneath somebody else's post, these things can get blown out of proportion very quickly. So just be very, very mindful of that. And if it's easier said than done, but it's something that you really have to take care of because your reputation, it can take you a lot of places. You don't want to be that lawyer when a client calls your name. So the justice of the peace says, sir, are you retaining a lawyer? And the client says, yes, I'm retaining Mr. So-and-so. And the justice of the peace pulls a face. Because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? She pulls a face. Maybe a lot of people didn't notice, but I noticed. That says, do you really want to hire Mr. X? Are you sure about that? And she's like, so you're going to hire him? Are you sure? And, the client probably was not picking up on those subtleties, but it's like she's trying to warn the client, which is not permissible. But so you don't want to be that lawyer. You don't want to be that lawyer that they're making fun of because you come to court wearing two different shoes, right? They can smell you as you walk in the door. Alcohol, right? You don't want to be that person.
Sounds like there's a true story behind that.
This job, as I said, this job is hard enough without hating what you do. So that's why try to find an area that you truly like. Because I tell you, when the challenges come, and they will, and there is no job, no area of law that's easy, you need to find ways to cope. And some people turn to substances. I mean, it's, what people do in their own time, it's their own thing. But when you bring it into the courtroom with you, it becomes an everybody problem.
At the risk of alarming you all, which might have already happened, sorry about that, our relationship, I guess, is an example of the opposite of that with reputation, right? Can you speak to what happens when your reputation is strong?
Oh, when your reputation is strong, I think you're always given the benefit of the doubt. For example, in law, in most areas of law, we're dealing with a lot of deadlines. We always have to file something by some deadline for something. That's just how it is. But if your reputation is that you always get your documents in on time, you're always prepared, then that one random occasion where you forget or you miss a deadline, you won't have hell to pay. Because sometimes missing a deadline can cause extreme prejudice to your client. Do the judges care? No, not really. That's your problem. You have an obligation to your client. But if the judges are familiar with you, the clerks, your colleagues, and they know that, listen, Adana always files her documents on time. Something must have happened. Then, you know what? If you ask for an extension, it'll very likely be granted. And that's just one example, of how when your reputation is good, things can work out for you. Officers recommend you. I mean, your colleagues recommend you to others. Your clients, and in this job, having referrals from your own clients, that's part of the way that we get business. People recommend you. You become known. Anybody has a problem in the community, social work, they come to you because they know that you know your stuff, you're a professional, you get it done. Right? So it's a way to build your business. Even if you decide, I want to work in a law firm, you still have to build your personal brand. What are you known for? She's known for anything legal research, she's on it. So that's where you kind of have to hold into your own skills and build your reputation. And don't let anybody tell you that, to do things kind of fly by night. Do things the right way. Always be prepared.
It sounds like, how do I say this? There's a portion of your job that's what we know and expect lawyering to be. But I think about the one that we did together, and there's all sorts of duties that fall outside of direct lawyering. Can you speak to some of those inside the job?
Well, the professional obligations to your client, you have to confidentiality. You have to be candid with your client. So if your client comes to you and says, I want to do X, Y, Z, or I want to put forward this position and you have some concerns, you have to tell the client. If the client wants to do something that's utterly ridiculous, you have to tell the client at the risk of maybe losing that client or the client becoming upset. I mean, there are so many things that we have to do. You have to cultivate your client relationship. You have to manage your client's expectations because some of them have the craziest expectations. So part of your job is also managing that, managing your business, managing the people that work in and around you. There's so many things that are required to carry any case from beginning to the end. And only 25% of it is what you see in the courtroom. 75% of it is the late night, the legal research, the negotiations, the back and forth. It's a lot, so to speak, but I manage. I try.
You have a really strong personal work ethic. It sounds like a lot of it is when nobody is watching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. And that's part of that's the standard I hold myself to. I want to, when I go into a courtroom, I'm prepared. I'm prepared for my case. I'm prepared for what the Crown's case is going to be. I'm prepared for what the judge can ask me. May not ask me, but can. That's kind of how I do my work. I mean, I prepare well in advance. I do a lot of research. I prepare elaborate memorandums to assist the judge because I find that when you do the little extra, it makes advancing your client's position that much easier, especially when you provide written materials or cases in advance that support your client's position. It's the difference between good resolution and a potentially pretty bad one.
And I would take back again. You don't necessarily know who's in the room, and who's watching, and who's listening.
No, you don't. Every time you're going to the courtroom, your back is turned, so you don't know who's behind you, right? Because the judge is up front, so you're this way talking to the judge, and then everyone else is behind you. And some of the people in the room, they're not only accused people, they are social workers, there are, for the young persons, there are, what do you call them? They work with the extrajudicial sanctions program. There are social workers. There are like the DAC coordinators, which is direct accountability program. There are a lot of different social justice coordinators that are in the courtroom to help accused people, and that they're there. So when they see you and they are familiar with the quality of work, if someone comes to them and says, "Oh, you heard about that lawyer, Adana? Is she any good?" Having seen you in action and seen your work, they are more likely to say, "Yeah, I think she's okay." I mean, most of them, there are rules in terms of they can't recommend anybody, but they can give a personal opinion. And they can only get that from observing. And everybody is observing. Every time. Never think that someone isn't watching. Someone is always watching.
I once had a student say, I'm not really interested in justice, I'm only interested in the law. Can you speak to that?
She's not interested in justice.
I'm not interested in justice, I'm only interested in being a lawyer.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. Can you speak to...
Well, they go hand in hand.
Why?
Right. Because the laws tell us how we orient ourselves, how we behave, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Justice can't be meted out, and justice is in the eyes of the beholder, unless we have a benchmark. And the law provides that benchmark. So the law says, if I hit her with my phone, that's an assault. That's wrongful conduct. I am making contact with her without her consent. If we didn't have laws, then who is to say that what I did was wrongful? I mean, justice is one of those relative words because it's truly in the eyes of the beholder. It's from where you sit as As an accused person, justice looks different. To a victim, it looks different. To the judge who is trying to balance all of the competing interests, it looks different. To the community, it looks different. And, I was discussing this with a friend, and think of a case where someone mows over or runs over two children with a car. This person, 19 years old, no prior convictions, but the difference between this person A is that this person did it intentionally because the two children were wearing a hijab. This, for example. And person B did it because they were under the influence of alcohol. So they went to a party, somebody spiked their drink, they were under the influence, they got behind the wheel, they drove, they ran over the children. For the mother of those two children, justice wants both of these people to go to jail for the rest of their lives. But I would think that the person who does it intentionally and for the reason of discrimination, because you're discriminating, there should be a higher penalty for that person as opposed to the person who had their drink spiked and quite wrongfully got behind the wheel and drove and accidentally ran over the two children. But for the mother, she just wants justice, right? So she doesn't care about the circumstances. And that's why I say it's different. For the lawyer who's representing the accused, it will be different. For the crown attorney who is representing society, it will be different. And the judge who has that heavy burden has to try to weigh all of these interests to figure out what is an appropriate sentence for person A who did it intentionally and person B where it was truly an accident, but where intoxication is not a defense. Right? Should both of them be sent to jail for 20 years? I mean, and that's kind of what you have to think about when it comes to law and justice. So I think they definitely go hand in hand. It's easy to say, I just want to be a lawyer, but what type of lawyer? I mean, if you don't want to get into criminal law, definitely deals with justice. But if you want to get into some different type of area of law, maybe that would not be, a big deal, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other questions? Clear when we're adding here. Do you have any tips or tricks to managing the capable of things for legal work?
It's a work in progress. Definitely dedicate a day of rest. Because if you're burnt out, you cannot, the quality of your work will not be the best. So definitely try to at least incorporate 1 day of rest where you don't do any work. And other than that, you have to know yourself. If you work better in the mornings, like I work better in the morning, I prefer to wake up early. When I say early, I mean like 3 a.m. and start to work. By midday, most of my work is done because I like my evening. I like to have my evening. I like to go to bed early. So you really have to know yourself. But when you're just starting out, we all have our dues to pay. So that's when it's going to be most difficult. When you first start out, if you're an associate or a student or you're an internship, you really have to burn the midnight oil. But it doesn't last forever. Well, at the end of the day, I go by what the law says, right? I defend my client within the bounds of the law. I do not go outside of those lines, and that's how I keep everything in check. I have difficult cases where the things that the client is alleged to have done can cause you a sleepless night. But my job is not to judge the client. It's simply to defend the client within the bounds of the law. If the client says to me, I did it, it was me, but I won a trial, I still have to run that trial. But I am limited in terms of what defenses I can run. So I can't run an alibi defense knowing that my client told me that he did it. I can't point the finger at another person and say maybe it was him, the alternative suspect defense. So I do my job within the bounds of the rules. And the rules is something you need to familiarize yourself with, because if you end up on the other side of the rules, you're going to be in a lot of problems. And again, it comes down again, you have to protect your reputation and your license at all costs. Do not let clients invite you to do something that's unethical. And they will. They will ask you to do it to your face. And you have to say no. And even at the risk of losing that client. And I had a client come to me and ask me to do something unethical, and I said no. And he said, okay. And he did things the way that they were supposed to be done. And he's been my client for about 10 years now.
It's a great point. I've had those too, where if I'm being totally honest, I hesitate saying no, and it works out better than you'd think it would.
Yeah. Some clients are just testing you, but some really want you to do it.
Yeah. But there's a respect when you say no that lasts longer.
Yeah. And there's this I would call it a famous case. It's the Bernardo case, where the lawyer had possession of some, I believe it was some incriminating tapes, and he was asked by the client to go retrieve the tapes and secure them of something like that.
So this group might be a little young. Bernardo was a serial killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that is one of those cases where, I mean, the lawyer, you do have obligations to your client. You have obligations of confidentiality. You have all of these obligations, but at the end of the day, you can still say no, regardless of what the client asks you to do. Because the client tells you, I want to do something, doesn't mean you have to do it. And you have to be prepared to stand your ground. Find somebody else. I'm sorry, I can't help you.
I was wondering if, like, you could speak more to, like, your journey into how you got into law school. Like, was there any setbacks that you faced, like, in regards to, like, do you have the LSAT scores you thought you were going to have, your grades going into?
No, my journey was different because I am from a different country. So in my country, to get into law school, you have to do A-level, which is kind of like the undergraduate degree that you guys do here. So I decided that I wasn't going to go to university, so I didn't bother with that. So I just went straight into work. And then while working, I decided I want to go to law school. So I didn't have to write any exam. And this was back in my country. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. So once I had the tuition and they looked at my high school transcript, they determined that I could participate in the program. And you just have to keep your grade point up. And once I passed the first year, they allowed me into second year, and that's how it went. So in terms of when I came to Canada, because I was already a lawyer, I already had my degree, I was already practicing, what I had to do was that I had to get a certificate of equivalency from the National Accreditation Committee or something like that. It's something governed by all of the law societies. And what they told me is that, listen, we need you to know about Canadian law. You have already demonstrated you're a competent lawyer in your country, but to practice here, you need to show us that you can become a competent lawyer in this country. So I was invited to either go back to law school here or write 8 exams, 8 what we call challenge exams, self-study, and if I passed them, they would allow me to write for the Ontario Bar. So that's what I did. So we had the 5 foundational subjects. Can't remember what they are right now. And I had 3 additional subjects. I had tort, property, criminal, civil, family. I can't remember, but there were 8 of them. I know it was 8 because I was devastated that I got 8 because I felt it was too much. But ultimately, I wrote all of the exams, I passed, and once I passed, they gave me my certificate, and they said, now you can write for the Ontario Bar, which is another self-study journey, which is about 1,000 pages or more for each subject. So you study for barristers, then you study for solicitors, I think 5 subjects each. 4-hour exam, open book, but it's a lot of material.
Can you do one and not the other?
No,
So there's no such thing as just a barrister or just a solicitor. It's always both.
always book.
Any last questions for Donna? Okay. So as we wrap up a class on professionalism, I think I had mentioned these students are heading into placement in, my goodness, like 6 weeks, give or take. What would you like future professionals to know? Takeaway.
Be professional. I mean, there are so many picked up trends that are going around. Be professional. The workplace is not where you go to hang out, not where you go to use your phone. Be proactive. If the placement means a lot to you and you're really trying to, get a job opportunity following that, even to get a good recommendation coming out of that, go to the job and do the job. If there is nothing, you don't have something assigned to you, be proactive. Make yourself helpful, learn, observe. There are too many young people I find, and I have a daughter around this same age group, and everybody wants an easy job. They want to go to work, not do anything, but want to get paid. They want to have time off whenever they want to have time off, not because there are rules, of course, and they want to have all the benefits without putting in the work. That there's nothing like something for nothing. If you are serious about this profession and you really want to make a good impression, and people remember you. Go there, put your best foot forward, and do what is asked of you. Don't do anything illegal. Of course, that's where you draw the line. But within the bounds, do what is required of you. As far as I've had experience where the student is saying, "Oh, well, that's not in my job description." Okay, but you're here to learn, and I'm trying to teach you. I had a student, and he doesn't know anything about criminal law, so I gave him some materials, and I said, you at least need to know the foundation. What is bail? What is the role of the judge and the peace? What is the role of the police? I gave him the materials to read, and I say, when you come back tomorrow, when you observe me in court, you will at least have an understanding of why I do some of these things. Did he read it? No, he did not. Was he a successful student? No, he was not. If he asked me for a recommendation, would I give it? No, I would not. Because I don't know. It's just, I don't know if it's just the times that we're in. But if you want to be successful, you have to make yourself rememberable for the right thing. One of my first opportunities in law in Canada was volunteering at a law firm. And I had to volunteer because I could not find a paying job. And as soon as the position opened up, the lawyer called me and he said, "Adana, do you want the position?" I said, "Oh no, I got a position." And since that, twice, because he's been expanding his firm, he's called me and he's offered me and said, I just had opening up a position for this. I'm expanding. I'm doing an immigration department. Would you come back to Brampton and work with me? And I had to decline because now I'm on kind of my own journey. And that was from a month of volunteering. It was the month before COVID. A month of volunteering. And 2 years later, or is it 2021? Can't remember. It's about 2 or 3 years later, he's still calling. Anytime he has a position, anytime he has a referral, he thinks of me. I've had, I don't work with police officers, but when you work in the courthouse, they get to know you. I've had clients come to me and said, this officer XYZ just retired, recommended you. This lady from Chatham Kent Health Alliance recommended you. This lady from CMHA recommended you. So once you do good work, people will remember and you get opportunities and they'll start to come to you. But if you go there and you just do nothing, you get nothing. And to be successful, you need people. You need people to know you, to see you, and to recognize the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.